Okay, I have a few big takeaways. Let me go through the big takeaways. So firstly, one of those points, Prime has like really, really bad optics. He has awful optics, both like behind the scenes and in front of the camera. With everything that I saw from him, the creation and the naming of a war room, it was stupid as fuck. His own stream where he defended himself, I don't think he did like a very good job or used good bits of evidence. He just does some things that are just really, really bad for his case, or really distract from things. And like, I feel like and he said as much, without Destiny coming on and arguing with Dylan, I think he would have been fucked. And I will also add in here that I think without Supreme interrogating Katarana and the people involved, like, I don't think it would have went well either. Again, I don't have like all the info here. I haven't watched everything, but like, I do think that it's worth noting that Wicked Supreme did a very good job of getting down to the bottom of like some really crucial questions, like the intentionality behind Katarana's statement that she put out.
When you wrote this tweet longer, you believed that Prime knew that what he was doing was wrong.
Is it weird that I don't think it's as easy as a yes or a no, because it really...
Well, how can it not be?
That's
as easy
fair.
as no?
It's not because...
I really don't know what Samantha said in the call, so
But what did you think she said? You don't have to know. It's about what you believed at the time you wrote.
Samantha did not give me any details as to what was said in the call.
Kind of pinning her down on like, did she think that Prime did this with malice? What did she think was going to happen by putting this out? What did she expect to happen there? Like, all of that he did a really good job with. And while I do agree that like Destiny talking to Dylan probably had a big influence on this, like, I also think that like, even if that didn't happen, if anybody had paid any attention to what Supreme was doing, I think that like Supreme would have also filled that space. No, that's just like my opinion. Now, what I haven't done is I haven't seen Destiny talking to Dylan and Kat, because the video ends there, right? And August said that he was going to put out a part 2. So I really do think that Supreme did a very good job of questioning people and getting down to the bottom of stuff as non-confrontationally as possible. And he kept his cool, you know? Like, there were a few parts where I can tell he's incredibly frustrated.
Okay, so it's really helpful if you can do your best to give me like a yes or no. When you wrote this
Okay, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it's okay.
Or like not letting her kind of get out of a lot of questions. I thought that was really, really good. I saw similar with him talking to other people as well. This kind of like asking a question, but also making sure that you get an answer to that question that is sufficient was something he did a really good job at. He didn't just like let shit go, or he didn't let like an answer just kind of wash over it. You know, that's something that I feel like I'm not necessarily very good at. When people just want to wash over stuff, if I really want to push them on it, I'll go to the point of frustration and then give up with the person, or I will just like let it go and hope that another question will be answered adequately. Like the time that I asked Bob 7 a bunch of questions, like either I'm gonna come off like an asshole in trying to ask him the same question like a dozen times, or I'm gonna give up with him. You know, I'm just gonna say,
then I'm going to let you go, Bob, because I have a bad feeling you're not going to want to talk about what we want to talk about here.
Desi said a couple of hours ago that he won't talk about that situation anymore. I'm done with that. We'll see. Time will tell with these things, you know? I don't mean to throw doubt on, you know, the word of God, because he is a God to some of you people, but, you know, I withhold judgment on such a statement as I'm done with that, because it's going to be really dependent on what else comes out, I think, even if he means it in the moment. I listened to Prime's response and he defended himself well with transparency in his rationalization of what happened. Sure, but I think the problem is that Prime's rationalization of what happened is not like... I don't want to be super mean to him because I didn't take notes on that and I can't give you specifics if you ask me, but it doesn't seem to me that he did a very good job. I just really don't care to go line by line through his explanation and stuff. You need to put on Dylan's stream on your stream and react to it. Oh, true. I want to see if Dylan will walk back the claim that he heard sexual harassment over the call. We'll see. We'll see. Good point. Watch Prime stream and protest to Dylan. That's... You guys are so fucking smart. What would I do without you? I love you guys. All right, we're gonna watch PrimeCayes.
Last week has been pretty terrible on a few levels, but I just want to be clear about like what's about to happen right now. No matter what's said between Dylan and I, this isn't in any way an invalidation of what Katarana was feeling and what she's been expressing. This is just Dylan and I working out on mistruths that were spoken before, but my response video from last week stands in its entirety. I'll make that very clear, right? So there were mistakes made all around. I made mistakes, me, right here, Prime, and I addressed those previously. So we are addressing lies and mistruths that were spread on Dylan's platform, and then moving forward.
That's all going to be Dylan specific. Okay. All right.
Me and Prime, we had a 4-hour call where we cleared up a lot of information that neither of us had and tried to clear up any misunderstanding we had. We went for 4 hours to find out what was the main things that should be talked about on a platform like this. And I've agreed to answer every single question that was put forward and to answer for everything that Prime gave to me on a list. And so I'm going to go down the list one by one on the rumors or mistruths or anything that's going around currently. So I'm going to go from the top of the list to the bottom of the list. So the first thing I'm going to address is the 12 women have been harassed and are soon to come forward. This was a mistruth that was spread on my platform. I shouldn't have had somebody on my platform spreading this without vetting that information or checking that information, and I should not have accepted that information at face value. I jumped the gun on accepting a lot of information on that stream that should have been properly vetted beforehand. I was not properly prepared to have that stream, not saying that it should have even happened in the first place. So that's the first thing I'll address, is that claim that was made by somebody on my platform that I should have properly vetted that claim, and I did not do the due diligence. The second one is Prime was told by Samantha Banana that he made Kat uncomfortable. That is completely untrue. While Kat did talk to Samantha Banana about talking to Prime, Samantha Banana did not go and talk to Prime. That was completely incorrect, and I should not have believed that on face value, and I should have asked for more information. That, again, is a mistake I made. Third one, Prime planned to use Kat's narcissistic personality disorder against her. That was, again, a claim made on my platform that was not properly vetted, and I believed on face value, and I should have more properly vetted, and I should not have believed that without proper vetting. Again, not doing my proper preparation while doing this. The fourth claim is Kat and Prime's relationship was purely professional and not close, intimate friends. This is not true. This is the impression that was given on the stream, and that impression was incorrect. They had casual conversations all the way up until they then had a professional business relationship later on when they knew each other. That is an impression that was given that should not have been given, and that should have been cleared up beforehand. The next one was that Kat was being paid the entire time during the relationship. That is untrue. Payments of, I believe, 250 American, 315 Canadian was established later in the relationship after booking occurred. I believe it was in June.
He sounds like he has a gun to his head, kinda.
Prime was holding a paycheck over Kat to threaten her. That was an impression that I think some people might have gotten. That is completely untrue. I have found no instance where Prime has tried to use payment directly to threaten Kat or indirectly to threaten Kat in any instance. I've been shown no evidence of that.
So there's one thing I'm looking for Dylan to talk about, and I don't think he will. Not talking to Prime about any of this and calling him a fucking sex pest and blocking him. I think that was really shitty. So I'm low-key waiting for that, and I'm not sure we're going to hear that, but I think that could have avoided a lot of this if he would have talked to Prime before he went public with all this stuff. I'm really surprised he didn't, and that he was so rude to him afterwards as well. So very dismissive.
The voice calls they shared were purely professional, in which Kat helped Prime out with panels, rather than they were just calls between friends. While I'm sure there were professional calls, they also had casual calls, and it's been demonstrated to me in private through information that Prime knows that most certainly that they had at least somewhat of a close relationship or a friendly relationship where they communicated back and forth. And the impression that they were never had any type of communicative friendly relationship is completely not true. And I have something prepared because I wanted to be very specific with my words on this instance, and that Prime has okayed the statement beforehand. So I'm just going to read this when it comes to a July phone call that I've talked a decent amount about. Whatever I heard or whatever I think I heard is irrelevant because I have no evidence that sexual harassment ever occurred. Regardless if I thought I heard something inappropriate, the proper thing to do would have been to bring it to his attention directly immediately after the incident and reach an understanding. not to attempt to shame him and destroy his reputation as part of a public spectacle based on an allegation. I apologize for not holding this matter and dealing with this matter privately. It should have been dealt with privately. I let my emotions get the better of me due to the type of situation that it was. And I should not have let my emotions get the better of me in the situation. And I should have handled it responsibly off live stream in private when we talk about whatever I thought I heard. Those are all the things that Prime gave me on the list. But I just want to go forward and say another thing here, that I handled the situation terribly irresponsibly. I should have talked to Prime when he offered to talk to me, immediately when he started getting any sign of what was about to happen. I should have taken that offer. I let my emotions guide my conduct, and I shouldn't do that. Definitely when it concerns what could have been the end of somebody else's career. And I shouldn't have let my emotions get the best of me. I should have not have trusted information at face value. And I should have done my due diligence, which I did not do. And for that, I sincerely and wholeheartedly apologize.
Thank you for that. I guess what I wanted to say at the end of this is that no one won in all of this.
Supreme won. Destiny won. I don't know.
This incident caused a lot of hurt on all sides. It's something that could have been easily avoided on multiple levels. This is something that could have happened a problem because there was an issue. And something that could have been had on a private, but it just wasn't. But like how this has ended up has been just completely disastrous. And what I'm about to say is not a woe is me thing. It's just like describing something that's happened. I had a platform for women that I created, Amazon Lily, and that's no more. We talk, have usually smaller streamers come on and have discussions. And that's a thing that's in the past now because people don't want to come on, and that's their choice. That's absolutely their choice. My point of bringing this up is that I don't see how anyone comes out better for this. When this has been all going on, people have been telling me that the silver lining is that, well, the next time this happens, and there'll be a next time somewhere, both on Twitch, Twitch politics maybe, right? The next time this happens, is that people won't be so quick to jump to conclusions. I don't believe that's the case. All the incentives to do this again are still in place. To jump on a story, right? Like initially put this forward and get monetization. For other people to take that story and with one side or barely understanding of any sides, right? To repeat it and to use it just for views and just playing up that drama. All those incentives are there to have exactly this happen. I would really like, it would be great. At the very least, yeah, we did, like, as a community, think about, like, what to do in the future. Like, how we interact with each other. Like, what is it that we're trying to do? Are we trying to inform people? Are we trying to entertain people? We're trying to do a little bit of both. But understanding that so often that drive for entertainment causes a lot of misinformation to go out. Like in this case.
Wow, coming from PrimeCayes.
Trauma.
These panel people are fucking throwing a lot of rocks from a glass house now that they got burned by misinformation. I don't know. I do feel bad for him, but I don't know. The misinformation angle is interesting to me, or platforming that kind of nonsense.
So let's maybe do better next time. I would really love that. To see us grow as a community from this, at the very least. Please. I just kind of want to move on from this, and to Dylan, please leave me alone. Please don't really talk about me. Please don't make any comments about my stream, my channel, as you've done in the past.
Damn!
Negative remarks, when I've never done that to you. So just leave me alone. Let me live my life.
Did they agree to that? Dylan doesn't look happy with that.
Okay, I respect your wishes.
He does have to kind of take it on the chin, even if they didn't.
I guess that's the end of it. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'm going to drop out.
Okay. Bye.
Well, hey, howdy, partner. That was quick. I'm really happy that was quick. Pretty sure Prime snuck that in there. Me too. I find it interesting that he was able to get that in at the end there. I do appreciate that this was short and sweet. I do appreciate that it was prepared and that Dylan had a list of things and he had to say them. I do think, and this isn't a criticism, this is just commentary, okay? I do think that the commenter in my chat that was saying that it sounded like he had a gun to his head and he was like just reading off this thing, It did kind of sound like that, but I think that's going to happen when you're reading something off of a list and it's like you're in like an awkward spot. It is incredibly unfortunate that Prime lost the Amazon Lily thing, and he's probably never ever going to get that back. However, here comes the hot take. I think that should have been taken away from him when everything happened with Kurt and it was handled the way it was handled. I think that's where that should have been taken away, and I think that would have made a lot more sense. The fact that it was taken away for this feels really bad, because I feel like what happened before definitely kind of warranted that. It happening now feels bad. Like, unfortunately, it's like a second strike against him, and even if it wasn't true or whatever, he's lost it. But like, I don't know, it feels bad that it's happening now, but that probably should have happened way back then. I don't know, it feels like a dickish thing to say, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. Advice to my people who are going to drop a fucking twit longer: your twit longer, if it is of a reasonable length, will always be scrutinized word by word. And I will have no sympathy for you stating that it must have been some editing error that is causing numerous problems with your twit longer.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I do wish that I could do Control-Z to see what did I originally write, because there were some parts of what I wrote that were like slightly edited. Maybe it is that I didn't even put the words even originally and that was added in. I can't recall.
I'm sorry. You needed to have that worked out before you put something out there. In my opinion, there are two kinds of gospel in a drama. There is what one side says as their like main document, and then there is what the other side says as their main response. These are two things that I take as gospel for each respective side. Almost like if two different countries went to war and they put out some like stuff about their ideology, like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to look towards to like generally characterize the entire situation. So if you fuck up your twit longer coming out with allegations, you done fucked up. You really need to think about that being scrutinized word by word. Similarly, if you are going to put up a response, you need to realize that that will similarly be looked at word by word, and that you are on the back foot. So you, even more than the person that initially put out the allegations, need to be very careful in your response. Doing things like creating something called a war room is probably not good optics, right? Doing something where you focus so much on like the business prospects of continuing an abusive relationship or whatever, that's going to draw some scrutiny and some eyes. The language that she had towards the end of one of the paragraphs where she's talking about how he thought she was one of those quiet women and whatever, that she tried kind of backpedaling on when she was talking with Supreme and not being honest about it, that's going to hurt you. You really need to think through the wording on what you're putting out, and you need to look at it from different perspectives. How do I do a review? Let me answer that, because it's really going to help you for understanding how you should do this in practice. When I do a review, I often like to watch the video multiple times from different perspectives. The very first one, I look at it as an untouched viewer, because that very first viewing is something you'll never ever get back. The way the jokes roll on you and sentences stick with you without being biased, that's an important thing to take note of. The second time I'll watch it from one perspective, the third time from another, whether that's like looking at what the defense would think about it, or what people that would defend somebody would think about it, or thinking about as somebody who's uninterested would think about it, or thinking what the other side would think about it, right? I'll give it multiple viewings with different levels of charitability and different levels of bias according to whatever I'm looking for. And I think that you should apply similar lenses to whatever you're going to put out. So if you're putting out a twit longer, levying accusations, think about somebody who would be antagonistic towards you about those accusations. What would they find problem with here? And anticipate that, because that would have been very easy to account for in her twit longer. I think you really need to like be looking at this from multiple perspectives, and in specific, you need to look at it from the antagonistic perspective. Is there any footholds here that I'm leaving for somebody to scale over this wall and really do damage to me, or really throw shade into like my story or my narrative or my truth? Right, to use some Zoomer lingo. So yeah, be very careful about that and read that from numerous angles to try and cover for that stuff. It seems like she didn't anticipate any pushback whatsoever. No, and then she got really upset when there was. Oh man, she has so many rhetorical failures. I have so many mentioned here. When she was like really not willing to like bite the bullet on like her framing of him being predatory and stuff, and then we figure out that all the way back on April the 29th, she was saying, I'm really trying to find a place to discuss this predator in our community.
So as I said, like for the title, that was not the original title I would have put, and I wanted to put something a lot softer. It was almost like one of those situations where, you know, when I'm in therapy, I'm like, okay, yeah, the person did this, this, and this, but do we have to use the word assault? You know, the therapist is like, no, like, but it is assault. I'm like, yeah, but do we have to use that word? Can we just say anything else? So I was really just trying to put like out like a I quit type of thing.
You can't really walk back on that because you had that opinion way back then, and then the title of your twitlonger is what it is. Trying to hand wave this business angle behind all of your decision making, which Eris picked up on very quickly, when she has quotes like, on the same day, April the 29th, I'll try to get a little bigger, then I'll tell ya. Like, okay, that's really not going to look good if you had said that publicly and now you're going to have that line in the twitlonger. That's not going to be good for you. She says, it just makes it hard because I'm trying to get more people from different communities to come on, and it's good for me to meet people, but ugh, that's not good. Really? Like, we really don't want those lines in our twitlonger mixed with these messages. And then what I initially wanted to mention, which was her very upset message that she did on Discord after the drama didn't really pan out the way that she had wanted. Literally, fuck you. You abuse your power with someone with mental health issues. Ellipses. So happy to see he gets to keep his platform. Like, okay. You're very upset that he got to keep his platform, so there had to have been some expectation that he would have lost his platform. No, he was going to lose the all-women panel, and if that's not enough, and you're explicitly pointing out that keeping his platform frustrating you, it would seem to be that you anticipated him losing his platform with the allegations. So your hesitancy to admit to that when you were talking with Supreme, or to give a clear idea of what you thought the outcomes would be, looks really bad. Prime has failures, this person has failures. Like, we need to really be careful with this kind of stuff. That stuff needed to be like really locked down, and she needed to have good responses that she really didn't. She fell apart with Supreme's questioning, and I'm not sure that should have happened. I think she needed to either commit to the position that she has new information and doesn't think what Prime did was that cancelable, or that she still thinks he's a harasser even with the new information taken into account. She kind of tried to retcon the interpretation of her twitlonger instead change. Yeah, there was a lot of focus on defense that like really was taking energy away from like handling the situation in a better way, which I think is why Dylan's approach here had to completely be to forfeit and to give up all hope of defending himself and to just take it on the chin, because unfortunately I don't think many people can do this balancing act of like correcting the initial account per information that they fucked up, or like per interactions that they fucked up, while also like trying to damage control on what was actually said there that was meant. Like, it's a tricky situation. I think that you have to like really take responsibility for what had happened, even if somebody else fucked it up. And this was something that I mentioned in private to a couple of people I was talking to, is it made me uncomfortable that she was kind of offloading a lot of like the blame onto like the Samantha person. Like, yeah, the Samantha person deserves some blame, but it often didn't have to do with like what Supreme was asking of her. And I think she needed to give Supreme like a solid answer, and he's a nice enough guy that then she would be able to say whatever her piece was afterwards, right? Like, no, I don't think that anymore. Unfortunately, when I came out with this, I was under a different impression, but yeah, I don't believe that anymore, and I understand how that could hurt him. Or like, you know, fess up to like the kind of effects of the initial statement, even if it was bugged by your inability to check information or some misfounded trust in people. But like beyond that, I also have a separate problem with this, which is that I don't think that any of this should have ever been offloaded onto the Sam person, ever. Bad idea. Bad idea. Really bad idea. This Cat person should have been explicit. That was a job for Cat to do. I think offloading the burden of making clear that you were uncomfortable and whatever should not have ever fallen on Sam. So Sam's inability to do that, or Sam lying about it, I think is like a problem, but a separate problem. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think Katarana, very clearly based on like the way that this worked out, is some super like successful manipulative person. Now, did she do some shady shit? Like, maybe, yeah. Did she handle the situation properly? Probably not, no. Did she kind of forego conversations that she probably should have had with Prime? Yeah, for sure. Now, is that indicative of some larger manipulative plot to like leverage his romantic interest in her to achieve some position of power? No, I don't think so, at least. And I don't think that the argument was made super well, right? Like, I don't like this either. She played Prime. I don't think so. You know what I think she did is she tried to hold on to a personal relationship that she had with Prime for as long as possible, in no small part to kind of propel her streaming career. But she didn't abuse, in my opinion, a romantic relationship with him to do that, unless you count only the abuse of a romantic relationship to be the releasing of information about his romantic advances onto her. Because from what we saw for a long, long time in that relationship, and from what Prime even admits, she wasn't really reciprocating that stuff. Now, the examples Steven uses of Discord women that play men and toy with them,
girls and guys, like generally it's girls, but guys can do this too. Like, you know that somebody really likes you, and you know that as long as you don't push too hard, you can kind of get shit from them or whatever. Like, people do this shit. People fuck around with people's feelings like this 100%. I'm not saying she's like a fucking master schemer or some like crazy shit like this. I just think that like she knows that he likes her a lot and she can get shit from him if she kind of like, you know, plays her cards right, which is what she did.
are very different. A woman who is flirting with you like really explicitly just so that she can get something is not the same as what Katarana did, even if we assume the worst of her. Like, if there were a bunch of messages where like she was explicitly flirting with him, and we had a bunch of those, her Prime is like, what the fuck am I supposed to make of this? She had winky faces. She said that like, I would love the bristles of your baby beard against my buttocks. Like, if she had said things like this, then I'd be like, okay, well, that's a bit fucky. So you really didn't like that he said this stuff to you. You said that you never ever like engage with it, but then you're like equally flirting here, and you're equally flirting like during when you're working with it. But that never happened, right? So it's not the same situation as the parallels that Destiny draws upon. And because of that, the extreme fervor with which he kind of takes his position, I think, is like unwarranted. And using these other examples as like parallels to the behavior that Katarana was exhibiting, I think is unfounded. It's not helpful. They're not good parallels. I think that oftentimes when he does this inference stuff, he goes to really, really impactful, emotional, and clear examples that maybe people in the audience who have been burned by similar people could latch onto, people who have been damaged.
Her initial thing about not dating him, but not ruling it out 100%, if I read that from a girl, I would know that this girl is trying to use me and string me along. I would know that 100% because I've seen girls try to fuck around with guys like that. So when I would see a message like that, I would go, get this fucking cunt the fuck out of here. I know what the fuck she's about, and I'm done interacting with this person ever. Like, I would block and remove that person and never associate with them because it's worse than them being unclear. It's them. I know they're trying to fuck with me. So as soon as I saw that message, I would have been like, boom, I'm done. Fuck that. 100%.
And for those people who have experienced the displeasure of being burned by such a person, they're going to really be on the lookout for those kinds of people. And any sort of indication from somebody that they trust, i.e. Destiny, saying that somebody may be that is going to be really convincing. And it doesn't take a lot of convincing for them to put a red flag in that person and cast them off. That's kind of my problem there. Do you think Katarana genuinely felt harassed, even though to most people wouldn't consider it being harassment? Yeah, I do. I think it made her uncomfortable. Here's a hot take. I think that at least some of that discomfort is coming from something about the relationship between her beliefs and her behavior. Because, and here I'm psych-andying, okay? So just take this with a huge ass grain of salt. When we hear Katarana talk about her kind of conflict within her, where she's talking about like, I really want to get a big platform and I want to meet people and I really want to make good shows with Prime and good panels and book good guests and, you know, I want to do all this stuff. But it feels like in order to do that stuff, I have to stomach the things that he's telling me because I'm awful at fucking communication. I can't be clear about like drawing lines for whatever reason, because she's bad at communication, because she's afraid it will cut her off from Prime, whatever the reason is, right? So I think that Katarana is made uncomfortable not only by the remarks that Prime is using, but also her own decision not to confront him explicitly about those remarks. Because it's not that she doesn't want him to be confronted, hence the twit longer, hence using Dylan's platform as a means of leveraging those accusations, hence asking this Maddie person to do that shit on her behalf in an instant when it's offered to her, hence her cries for help on No Comment Chick's stream and like dropping hints out there so that other people can help her. She really does want to confront that, but she will not push herself to confront it. And I think that there's a discomfort that comes from that situation that she is putting herself into and that she is continuing to be an active part of because she's choosing not to like be up front with him. Like, it's tough because you don't want to prescribe to somebody undergoing the abuse to like be more foot down about it, but she was in a position where she definitely could have been more foot down about it, and I'm not sure that Prime would have responded in the way that she was expecting. We don't have any reason to believe that. I think what she doesn't mention, and this is another total guess from me, is that she didn't want to lose the personal relationship that she had with Prime, that she was very hesitant to even talk about or be transparent about, right? This kind of very personal, friendly relationship that she had with Prime behind the scenes. I think that what would really be compromised is not the business relationship she would have had with Prime, not the networking relationship she would have had with Prime, but the personal relationship that she would have had with Prime. Prime would have no longer felt comfortable being in super long calls with her, which he made clear when he said, hey, if you have a boyfriend, why the fuck are you doing these calls with me?
We used to have phone calls with Prime back in February and March, and at some point he was talking about like how much he was like interested in me, and I said, hey, I have a boyfriend, and he got really upset. Like, how come you're having phone calls with me if you have a boyfriend? I'm like, well, we're just having phone calls. There's nothing special about these phone calls.
That's a boundary that exists for Prime. That's a belief that Prime has. And I don't think it's fair to just shit on Prime for believing that it's weird that you're doing this with a guy when you have a guy who is your boyfriend. If Prime views it as a conflict of interest, that's because if he was in a relationship with a woman and that woman was in these super long calls divulging personal details with a random other dude, he would be uncomfortable with that. I would argue, and again, shot in the dark, so we're on a long chain of those, that Dylan was probably uncomfortable with that. And I think he was explicit in mentioning that he was uncomfortable with it when he heard the remarks that Prime was giving to Katarana, right? Like, I don't think it's unreasonable to be uncomfortable with the idea that somebody is spending that amount of time, that amount of personal energy, and divulging those kinds of details to somebody when they're in a relationship with somebody else. I know I'm taking a lot of shots in the dark with that, but that's my honest take. These are the things that I'm seeing that are not being mentioned, and this is like how I'm arriving at those conclusions. So, you know, I think that there was a personal relationship there that she was worried about losing, and I don't blame her for that either. But it does bother me that it wasn't mentioned, because I do think that that had to be in no small part like part of the reason why she didn't want to be forthcoming about that stuff and why she would want somebody else to do it. Because if somebody else did it and they told them that she was feeling uncomfortable and she could just get through that really quickly, she might be able to salvage it, right? I didn't tell you that, you know, yada, yada, yada. Yep, I've seen exactly this stuff with friends, as have I, but I'm not trying to like project like what I've experienced with friends onto this. I'm really just trying to work within the bounds of like what I've seen from the people and what makes sense for me. I really do feel like there's so much good doujinshi out there. I don't know why you wouldn't just like read it. Like, there's really good futa. Oh god, I shouldn't say this. Never mind.